Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game So Derek and I got a super fun and exciting episode for you guys today, because while we wait for the PC port of GoldenEye 007 from N64 over to PCs, we have a brand new HD texture pack in both 1080p as well as 4K. It is still work in progress, and obviously when we get the PC port, you'll see stuff like this as well, but it is a really fun thing to showcase to show just how far modders and artists can actually push the N64 in emulation. They can definitely tell there haven't been any improvements yet to the overall models of their texture faces, because I said work in progress. Before we get too far involved though, do me a huge favor, go down below, hit like and subscribe, and ring that notification bell. Definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, I got a Patreon link down below as well. And just so you know, I am using the 4K texture pack here, not the 1080p one, so if you do notice some hitching, I believe that's what it is. Although interestingly, I took a look at my CPU, GPU, and memory allocation and resources, and I had over 50% free on every single component. So it seems like whatever the hitching involved here is, it isn't some sort of overrun of my available memory or otherwise the power of my PC. Just seems to be something in the emulation. I'm using Rosalie's Mupin GUI for this as well. But you can see here the texture still has load in. That's just in the N64 engine. When you actually look at these barrels here, you can see the absolute improvement in the textures, although it is ill-advised to stand near barrels to try to get texture shots when you forgot to shoot one of the enemies in the scene. That was actually kind of funny. But this is kind of indicative of what you're going to see on a GoldenEye PC port when it is available, because we have the N64 decomps, N64 recomps, and N64 PC ports. But in the meantime, until GoldenEye 007 comes out, there's fans and developers out there doing these patches, and it really is a huge difference between what the N64 textures will look like and this. Because as much as I love the N64 game, and I still kind of have some nostalgia for the N64 look, we can all admit that the texture cache on N64 was not sufficient for what you needed if you didn't want to have those Vaseline smeared textures all over the place. It is kind of nostalgic in a way, but today in the modern era, people want a little bit better. So if you can get some 4K piss staining on a toilet, why not do something like that? And you will notice that not every single texture in the game is done yet. Some of the walls are going to be basically still their 240p texture, so it kind of is a mixed bag. But as a project that is a work in progress, it's always fun to showcase these things and talk about just how far software emulation can push. Because even though I expect 2026 to be a massive year on the decomp, recomp, and PC port side, you're going to see a lot of emulators get updates, and you're going to see a lot of projects like this as well. They kind of go hand in hand, part and parcel, being one and the same thing, even if they do things in completely different manners. If we take a look here, you'll see some of these letters are not upscaled whatsoever. They're still in their original format, but then in 4K you have here some of the developers and people that worked on this game. So I wanted to put that in just because it made me kind of happy to be able to showcase that. And that kind of is the juxtaposition between the new textures and the original textures, and you're going to see them pretty much across the entirety of GoldenEye. But I love that people spend this much time actually doing these things. Like this console right here, you can see the Cyrillic letters here, because obviously you're in Russia, but otherwise it's one of those things. It basically looks completely new, like it's a 4K game, not a 240p game, and that is because, at least in this instance, with the internal rendering resolution bumps of Rosalie's Mupin GUI, along with the texture packs and everything else, it kind of feels like a quote-unquote modern game. Now do remember that this isn't changing any of the polygonal complexity as far as the models are concerned. They're still going to have the same amount of polys in them. You basically have to have some sort of model swap out to make that look any better. So it's kind of like a modern game trying to look like an N64 game, and that really isn't something we get much of in modern retro. People will make new games and kind of target the Sega Saturn or PlayStation 1 aesthetic, or even Sega Genesis or Super Nintendo, but no one really makes a new game not for N64 that has the quote-unquote N64 look. This is kind of as close as we're going to get to that, and honestly, again, it is a good time. But I would love to see a developer out there make a brand new game in a modern engine, but make it look like an N64 game. Maybe if the N64 had twice as much power and better textures than it did back in the day. I don't expect anybody to do that, but it's one of those things. I would love to see it happen, and if you have any examples of that actually happening, leave me a comment down below. Let's move into our first soundtrack sample, just because the music is still a 10 out of 10, and I'll be right back with a lot more GoldenEye. wanted you to hear that soundtrack sample because I wanted you to hear the audio hitch there, because again, I'm a little confused as to why I'm getting this hitching, because all of my system monitors show me having at least half of my system resources still available, so I'm not sure if it's something in the software emulation where loading in these textures is just basically kind of bogging the entire system down in the emulation, but not actually on my PC. If you guys have any thoughts on that, do let me know, because it's one of those things. And 64 emulation is great, but it still has room to grow like basically any other emulator out there. So I just couldn't really figure out why I was getting that hitching. Again, I just think it must be something to do with those 4K textures, maybe overrunning the actual emulation in and of itself. As we move into the next level here, again, I just love how this looks. I love the original level geometry and complexity along with the 4K graphics. It really just is a nice marriage of both the modern as well as the old, and that's what you kind of want out of a project like this. And even when we do have a PC port or a recomp of something like GoldenEye, you're still going to basically have the same models and you're just going to still have the same geometry. We've seen that basically with every single game we played so far on the PC side of things from N64. It has a more modern look. It has 16:9 support. A lot of times it'll even have dual analog controls, but then you'll get stuff like 120 to 240 frames per second, anything else like that. And the nice thing about 007 is it does run at an uncapped frame rate. We saw that in the analog 3D comparison footage, so basically you could make this thing run almost as fast as you wanted to. Now maybe the logical break is something like 500 to 600 frames per second, but this game doesn't tie its logic really to the refresh rate, so it is nice. It should be able to do something like real frames versus interpolation. But again, in the meantime, you have fun stuff like this to play, and something like this looks amazing on my LG C4 OLED TV. And because we do have emulation, you can basically just go into multiplayer and have 2 or 4 player matches with all of these texture packs, all of these 4K textures, and then still that original N64 vibe going on. And it's one of those things. I definitely recommend having an N64 controller for your PC. I use the 8-bit Do one, and honestly I find that works better on PC than it actually does on the analog 3D. But as we move into the actual Aztec here, you'll see that a lot of the textures on the walls are completely redrawn, and for the first time ever you can actually discern what they're actually trying to impart. Because that is the thing. The developers and artists at Rare made a lot of fun textures back in the day, but you really couldn't actually appreciate them because they were just so blurry. But you leave me a comment down below and you tell me, do you like these new textures? I would be curious. I mean, I can't imagine anyone's going to be offended by them, but it's one of those things. Part of the overall GoldenEye quote-unquote look is having that low res, just like basically every other N64 game. So it's one of those things. Maybe it does it for you, maybe it doesn't do it for you. And I will say I just basically rushed into this level here, not really trying to actually be strategic at all, because it's one of those things when you want to look at textures in a game that actually has gameplay, sometimes you realize you're not paying attention to the right things. One more soundtrack sample, and I'll be right back with more. So if you didn't notice there, a lot of the textures in that particular level actually haven't been redone yet. You'll see here as we actually go onto that ship, that life ring, definitely not in 4K. But if we move over to this missile right here, you're going to see that the writing as well as that kind of caution tape is in 4K. Because again, I want you to remember, this is work in progress. It's not 100% complete, but the developers and artists have said they're going to continue to work on this, and hopefully one day soon we have a full 4K texture replacement GoldenEye 007 to work in emulation. Because don't forget, those texture packs are also going to be very useful when something like GoldenEye 007 has that PC port, because these developments are often shared, and a lot of the N64 recomps and N64 PC ports we play are using mods that were first developed on software emulation then brought over, and that is definitely something to look forward to. Because imagine a future in which you can play GoldenEye in 16:9 on your PC with a native executable, being able to have 4K textures in, and a ton of other mods. That really is the world I want to live in, and I think it's the world everyone wants to live in. And that is just kind of a world pun for James Bond and 007 in and of itself. But if you want to check this one out, the link is in the description below. Do be aware though that 4K texture pack is going to be a little bit over 8 GB. I think that's maybe why this is hitching a little bit. Take a look at this super clean text. Like I said, this is a 10 out of 10 as far as I'm concerned, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.